If you read financial news, you have seen the headline. It appears everywhere. Forbes, The Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, The New York Times, they all call it the exact same thing, the Great Wealth Transfer. The premise is very simple. Over the next 2 decades, the baby boomer generation, which holds a disproportionate amount of global wealth, primarily tied up in real estate and equities, will pass away. When they do, they will leave an estimated $80 to $100 trillion to their children. Millennials and Gen Z. It is projected to be the largest transfer of capital in the history of the human race. Financial advisors are planning for it. Real estate markets are banking on it. Entire generations of younger people, currently locked out of housing markets and struggling with inflation, are quietly building their long-term financial expectations around it. The assumption is that the cavalry is coming. The inheritance will arrive. The wealth will trickle down. There is just one problem with this narrative. For the vast majority of the middle and upper middle class, it is completely false. The $80 trillion is real. The money exists, the assets exist, the homes exist. But it is not going to the children. It is going somewhere else entirely. To understand where the greatest accumulation of middle-class wealth in history is actually going, you have to look at an industry that most people prefer to ignore until they are forced to deal with it. And you have to look at a specific type of financial engineering that is quietly restructuring the entire global economy. This is the story of how your inheritance is being systematically extracted, and it starts with a collision between demographics and private equity. Let's begin with the demographic reality. In a previous video, we talked about the collapse of birth rates. But there is a second half to the demographic story. We are not just running out of young people. We are simultaneously experiencing the largest surge in elderly populations ever recorded. People are living longer, but they are not necessarily living healthier. The gap between health span, the years you live without chronic debilitating illness, and lifespan, the total years you are alive, is widening. Modern medicine is incredible at keeping the human body alive. It is less incredible at preventing the cognitive decline, mobility loss, and chronic care requirements that come with those extra years. This means that a massive, unprecedented percentage of the population is going to require long-term, intensive, around-the-clock end-of-life care, nursing homes, memory care facilities, assisted living, and long-term care is staggeringly expensive. In the United States, the average cost of a private room in a nursing home recently surpassed $100,000 per year. In many major metropolitan areas, memory care for dementia or Alzheimer's patients easily exceeds $150,000 annually. Now, look at the median retirement savings of the baby boomer generation. It is roughly $200,000, even for the upper middle class. Someone who owns a home outright worth $700,000 and has $500,000 in a retirement account, the math is brutal. 3 or 4 years in a memory care facility, multiplied by 2 spouses, will entirely liquidate a lifetime of accumulated wealth. The house must be sold. The retirement accounts must be drained. The assets must be liquidated to pay for the care. This is the first mechanism of the wealth drain. The inheritance does not transfer to the children because it is consumed by the final 5 years of the parents' lives. But this is only half the story. If this were just a story about expensive medical care, it would be a tragedy of biology. But it is not just a tragedy of biology. It is a masterpiece of financial engineering, because the people on the receiving end of that wealth transfer, the entities collecting the hundreds of thousands of dollars per patient per year, have changed. Enter private equity. Over the last 2 decades, private equity firms have executed a massive, quiet rollout across the healthcare sector. They have bought up veterinary clinics. They have bought up dentistry practices. They have bought up emergency rooms. But their most aggressive and most profitable acquisition target has been nursing homes and long-term care facilities. Private equity fundamentally changes how a business operates. When a private equity firm buys a nursing home, they are not buying it because they are passionate about elder care. They are buying it to extract maximum financial value in a 3 to 7 year window before selling it to another firm. The way they extract this value is brilliant, legal, and deeply destructive to the quality of care. It is called the OpCo-PropCo split. Here's how it works. When a private equity firm buys a nursing home, they split the business into 2 entirely separate legal entities. The first entity is the property company, the PropCo. This company owns the physical building and the land it sits on. The second entity is the operating company, the OpCo. This company employs the nurses, provides the food, manages the patients, and actually runs the facility. On paper, they are separate. In reality, they are controlled by the same private equity firm. As soon as a split happens, the PropCo, the real estate company, starts charging the OpCo, the nursing company, exorbitant, hyperinflated rent to use the building. The PropCo makes massive, guaranteed profits. The private equity firm takes those profits, leverages them, pays themselves massive management fees, and generates incredible returns for their investors. But what happens to the OpCo? The operating company that actually cares for the patients. Because it is now paying astronomical rent to its sister company, the OpCo looks like it is operating on razor-thin margins, or even running at a loss. It has no money. So what does a business with no money do? It cuts costs. And in a nursing home, the biggest cost is human beings. Staff. Private equity-owned nursing homes aggressively reduce staffing levels. They replace highly paid registered nurses with lower-paid certified nursing assistants. They increase the patient-to-staff ratio to the absolute legal limit, sometimes beyond it. They cut the quality of the food. They cut maintenance. They cut basic supplies. The data on this is not ambiguous. It is terrifying. Multiple massive economic and public health studies, including a landmark paper from the National Bureau of Economic Research, have analyzed what happens when private equity takes over a nursing home. The results are consistent. Staffing levels drop. Emergency room visits spike. Citations for health and safety violations increase, and most shockingly, patient mortality increases by roughly 10%. Going to a private equity-owned nursing home is statistically more dangerous to your life than going to an independently owned one. But financially, it is a machine. Even while the quality of care plummets, the facility continues to charge $100,000 a year or more because the patients have nowhere else to go. Because the demand for long-term care is completely inelastic. If your mother has advanced Alzheimer's, you cannot simply choose not to buy care. You have to pay. And this brings us back to the great wealth transfer. The wealth of the baby boomer generation. The houses they paid off over 30 years, the 401ks they diligently funded, the stock portfolios they built, is being funneled directly into the system. The boomer gets sick. The family realizes they need memory care. The facility charges $10,000 a month. The family sells the family home to cover the cost. That money goes to the operating company. The operating company hands it immediately to the property company in the form of rent. The property company hands it to the private equity firm in the form of dividends and fees. The wealth transferred all right. It just didn't transfer down to the millennials or the Gen Z children. It transferred up, to Wall Street, to limited partners, to private capital. The middle class is being strip-mined at the end of its life. This is the financialization of everything. It is the core economic operating system of the 2020s. Financialization is what happens when the primary goal of an economy shifts from creating value, making better products, providing better services, to extracting value. It is the optimization of a spreadsheet at the expense of reality, and it is not just happening in nursing homes. If you have wondered why the quality of your local veterinary clinic has declined while the prices have doubled, it is because private equity bought it, consolidated it, and applied the exact same extraction model. If you have wondered why the software you use went from a one-time purchase that worked perfectly to a monthly subscription that constantly breaks and shows you ads, it is because the product was financialized. The term for this in the tech industry is enshittification. The platform stops serving the user and starts exclusively serving the extraction of capital. If you have wondered why starter homes are increasingly bought by all-cash corporate buyers, locking families out of the neighborhood, it is the exact same mechanism. But the nursing home crisis is the ultimate expression of this model, because it preys on the most vulnerable population, at the most vulnerable time in their lives, to extract the largest pool of accumulated capital in human history. So, what happens when the money runs out? What happens when the boomer spends down their entire net worth, sells the house, drains the accounts, and is still alive, still needing care? In the United States, they go on Medicaid. Medicaid is the government safety net program designed for the impoverished. But increasingly, Medicaid has become the default long-term care insurance for the formerly middle class. Once the private equity firm has successfully drained the family's accumulated wealth, the burden of paying for the substandard care shifts to the taxpayer. The state takes over the bill. The private equity firm keeps collecting the rent. It is the privatization of profit and the socialization of loss. And the math on this at a national level is completely unsustainable. As the population ages, the number of people requiring state-funded long-term care is going to explode. The tax base of younger working-age people is shrinking, as we discussed in the demographic collapse episode. The dependency ratio is breaking. The governments of the world are looking at a future where they must provide massively expensive end-of-life care for a soaring population of elderly citizens who have been entirely depleted of their assets by an extractive, financialized healthcare system. It is a slow-motion economic catastrophe. Now, this is the point in the video where most people feel overwhelmed, angry, paralyzed. But this channel is not about doom scrolling. It is about understanding the system so you can navigate it. Information is only useful if it changes your behavior. So, how does this information change your behavior? First, if you are a millennial or Gen Z, you must completely decouple your financial planning from the expectation of an inheritance. If you are assuming that your parents' house or your parents' retirement account will eventually serve as your safety net, you are playing a very dangerous game of statistical roulette. The odds are extremely high that their assets will be entirely consumed by their own longevity. You must build your financial foundation on the assumption that $0 are coming. Any wealth that does survive the end-of-life care gauntlet should be treated as a windfall, not a strategy. Second, the conversation about asset protection needs to happen a decade earlier than you think it does. For the parents and grandparents watching this, and for the children who need to have this difficult conversation with them, estate planning is no longer just about deciding who gets the silver. It is about legal and financial fortification. There are legal instruments, specifically irrevocable trusts and specialized estate structures, that can protect family assets from being entirely liquidated by Medicaid and long-term care recovery programs. But these instruments come with strict look-back periods. In the US, it is typically 5 years, meaning if you try to move your house into a protective trust only after you get a dementia diagnosis, it is too late. The system will claw it back. The planning must happen while everyone is healthy. While the cognitive decline is a theoretical risk, not a present reality, the families that survive the great wealth drain are the families that engage in aggressive, early, uncomfortable legal planning. Third, understand the leverage of your own health. We talked about health span versus lifespan. The single most effective financial strategy for protecting wealth against the end-of-life extraction machine is not a trust fund. It is physical resilience. Every year you can delay the onset of chronic disease. Every year you can maintain mobility. Every year you can avoid requiring 24/7 institutional care is hundreds of thousands of dollars saved. Diet, sleep, strength training, cardiovascular health. These are not just lifestyle choices. In a financialized healthcare system, they are asset protection strategies. Your physical health is the strongest shield you have against private equity extraction. Fourth, recognize the market opportunity, because we know this demographic wave is coming, and we know the current private equity model of elder care is broken, abusive, and increasingly hated by the public. This creates a massive market vacuum for alternatives. Multi-generational housing, co-living communities for the elderly that are owned by the residents, not by Wall Street. In-home care technologies that allow people to age in place longer, avoiding institutionalization entirely. Preventative health models that focus on extending health span rather than merely managing decline. The entrepreneurs and investors who build the alternatives to the extractive nursing home model are going to capture a massive segment of the economy over the next 30 years. Because nobody wants to send their parents to the current system. They only do it because they have no other choice. Build the other choice. The great wealth transfer is not a myth. The money is moving. $80 trillion is changing hands, but it is not flowing smoothly from one generation to the next, like water down a stream. It is being intercepted. It is being filtered through a complex, aggressive, highly engineered system designed to capture as much of it as legally possible. You are living in an era of financialization. The systems around you, healthcare, housing, technology, are increasingly optimized not to serve you, but to extract from you. Understanding how that extraction works is the first step to defending against it. You cannot out-earn a system designed to drain you. You can only outmaneuver it. Plan early. Protect your health. Build your own wealth independent of inheritance. The cavalry is not coming. You are the cavalry.